Hello, this is Dr. Garrett Castleberry, Program Director for Communication, Media, and Ethics at Mid-America Christian University. This video is the kickoff of our Week 2 digital Q&A lecture. Q&A are questions coming from students, part of our weekly discussion questions assignment in Column 3533, Public Relations, Advertising, and Brand Management. And so we want to continue this lecture series and have that asynchronous dialogue with you all as you're asking questions, generating questions, coming directly from our readings, but also improving our question asking process, including sort of our organizational means of written communication, and then hopefully it's helping sort of stimulate that growth in critical thinking as well. And it's, as always, it's important to critically think about the texts we're engaging, whether that text is a written text, a textbook, a media text, okay, film, television, radio, podcasts, but also we can feel confident and comfortable critically engaging advertising and marketing strategies, which we're doing heavily in this course. All right, and so to kick off Week 2's lecture, I actually want to back up a little bit and address a couple of final questions I didn't get to from Week 1. There were a few before the recording kind of shut off for good that day, and then also we had some late submissions, and I thought there was a couple of great questions that I would love to include to start off. So this will bridge Week 1, and then we will get into some Week 2 questions as well to help put a bow on Week 2 as we're preparing for Week 3 and midterm reports. All right, so let's look at a couple of questions coming out of the Week 1 readings, starting with Haley. And in Week 1, our theme, our medium of the week was print advertising. And so that's where we're coming from. And then you'll notice the shift in questions because in Week 2, we pivot to talk about radio. All right, so that's just a little bit of contextual framework there. Haley asks, advertising agencies spend a lot of money on their advertisements. If the advertisement does not work out the way it was meant to, could that be a potential problem to the company financially? Easy question. Answer is yes. Yes. Let's see. I'm going to skip this question because it does come up in some of our more frequently. So we'll return to it. Let's see. How do advertisers use tactics to make us believe certain products will bring us happiness? Great question. It's got some buzzwords there, particularly how do advertisements sell this idea of happiness, which is it's a key trope in advertising. And I would suggest that anything in the ad that projects positivity, people having fun, or just entertainment, like becomes a kind of artifact that's entertaining to the audience. That is communicating quote-unquote happiness to a certain extent. There are some excellent volumes out there, by the way, but one book in particular where the researcher went around trying to find out what makes people happy. In fact, now that I think about it, was that a book author that went on even the Oprah circuit, that sort of thing, getting that out there? I think it was tackled at both from a mainstream point of view, but also one that was far more meticulously researched, from an actual scholar. But there are some important studies on that, on happiness, right? Or even the country, right? That's what it was. The country that created a happiness quota, and one of those books, and I hate, I'm just having this idea, so I didn't have the research in front of me ahead of time, so that can always be a dangerous thing. But there is the book about that was also charting that country and their process. How does integrated marketing communication work within advertising? Well, integrated marketing communication it increases attentiveness to personal communication. It's more personalized. It's more direct a style of marketing communication, and it is and often utilizes a multimedia strategy instead of thinking about ads that simply run on TV or simply run on radio or have that traditional mass communication front of one central location sends a message to many. Now, all of mass media does that, but integrated strategies, for example, the way we see people interact on social media, give off the illusion of a more intimate and personal interaction between the product and the consumer. Okay, and then this is a worthy question coming out of chapter 9 from Blakeman's Integrated Marketing Communication, and thus it's great, and I encourage you all, please, in your questions, you need to be specifying where the question's coming from with regard to the reading. And that's simply, it's great question writing, but it adds so much more clarity, all right? So it allows the respondent, whether I'm the respondent or if we were in a traditional classroom together having these questions to generate discussion, we would need the extra information to add that clarity, all right? So look for that. So I like that about this question. We're rewarding it as such. In chapter 9 of Integrated Marketing Communication, it covers the topic, or Blakeman covers the topic of newspaper advertising, our week 1 theme. Everything seems to be going digital these days. Yes. Do you think newspaper advertisements will eventually become a thing of the past? Yes, it looks that way. We're probably going to have, at least for, the next long while, a few national and regional and local newspapers sustaining. But that number continues to go down, all right? So it is a medium in decline. Everyone has to, if they don't already have a simultaneous digital footprint with their outlet, they either need both or have moved to exclusively digital content. All right, so that's the clear direction we're moving in. And that question about will eventually become a thing of the past, let me ask this question, all right? I'm going to ask a rhetorical question, but you answer it in your head right now. When was the last time you read a newspaper? And I'm talking about an actual print newspaper, right? Not when was the last time you read a newspaper article online on the website or on your phone. When was the last time you held paper and read it? I thought this was a great question because I've thought about it myself, and my instinct is to go, I read newspapers all the time because I used to, and I used to enjoy them. I would take advantage of, when I was in college, they would always have free newspapers around, or if I'm in a hotel, they have newspapers around, or you work in advertising, there was usually newspapers around, or looking at the newspapers that were advertising in, or when I was also a student, I worked on a student newspaper, so I was dealing with physical paper all the time. But it's been a while. I can't remember the last time I purchased a newspaper in physical form. So that's tricky. I'll occasionally pick them up outside of restaurants, like local ones, sort of news mags, these periodicals of sorts that are kind of like newspapers. But that print is declining, and that's a real struggle. That's a $1 million, $1 billion question for newspapers, how to regain that footing. All right, let's switch to some of our recent questions. Looking at a couple from Larissa. Larissa asks, how do we properly distinguish if Lisa drank the beer because she saw the ad, or if she came to the conclusion to drink the beer on her own? A chicken and egg question, all right? And so this is coming out of Ads, Fads, and Consumer Culture, all right? The Arthur Asa Berger text that we're engaging. And so it's a chicken or egg, and I think here's the thing. Chicken and egg might be misusing that phrase a little bit, but the image, ultimately, the image can speak immediately or in a delayed way to the audience, all right? So it can immediately persuade me toward that product by nature of its visual allure. or it's simply embedding product knowledge that may be more useful to me later, right? Or it may push me over the edge, or give us, this is the danger of advertising, give us a false impression of reality, right? So often we see these, there was a dry period, right, where you didn't see alcohol, like hard liquor ads on TV any longer. Like, that was a thing, and you did still see, beer advertising's always been there, but hard liquor. And then it came back hard, right? No pun intended, in the mid 2000s. And when you see these ads, it's always, it's at the most boisterous and frenzied sort of Miami nightclubs possible. I'm thinking about FX used to run like Bacardi rum ads all the time, and they were pairing it with more skewed, grown-up content, in the late evening, but still. And so they're giving off this heightened atmosphere, and everyone's having fun, and it's highly choreographed, right? But the reality is that not everyone consuming with that kind of frenzy is having fun, or is in sort of in the shape of of a CrossFit ballet dancer, right? All of these things. And so we understand that advertising can be misleading, but it doesn't mean it's not doing work, right, at that unconscious level or the conscious level. I think about it's similar to the way film works too. And let me look at an older example you all might be less familiar with. There is a genre of film, and it's particularly situated in a certain time in American history, and we identify it now as film noir. And it wasn't always recognized. I mean, while these films were coming out, they weren't called noir. It was a term that sort of became populated later, once critics and scholars and people started looking backward and identifying what was happening in that era. But I'm not going to go over trope and convention, but think about the hard-boiled detective, right? We're talking black and white movies that use a lot of light and shadow, and may have characters that are coated in shades of gray instead of sort of black and white in terms of like their moral character. And this was an innovative storytelling form at that time in the movies. And one of the most prominent conventions, if you go back and study or observe some of those old films, you think about the Maltese Falcon was basically what helped kick off that era of filmmaking. But there's so many other great titles, The Big Sleep and Double Indemnity and others. But there is a lot of on-screen smoking, right? Because smoking was prominent then. But smoking became this kind of genre convention that was part of the storytelling form. And that is significant for a lot of ways. Now, it was a cultural norm at the time, right? So for most grown-ups, more people were probably doing that than not doing that. And there wasn't a lot of research, there wasn't a lot of public or private studies done to suggest it was bad for us. It was just a habit and a cultural practice. But anyway, in film, particularly black and white film, there is this sense that smoking is appealing, right? It, in layman's terms, looks cool. Okay, but the reality is we're only receiving that information in a limited amount of dimension, right? We can see it, and maybe there are things we can hear: the strike of a match, the blowing, maybe the soft blowing of smoke, or something like that. The putting out of the burning of an ash, but we're not sensing it fully. We're not smelling it, right? We're not intaking it, and so it's an illusion. That's an example of film works just like other advertising. It's always advertising a message, a story, right? Information, and so that's a way to think about how the image can speak to us in both immediate or delayed ways. All right, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be back part 2 of our ongoing digital Q&A lecture. Thanks.